Okay, so we're back, and now what we're going to be doing is fixing our UVs here. So, what do I mean by fixing? Well, we're just going to go around and take a look at any stretching that's happening. So we've got this checker pattern on here, but it's a bit big to be able to see the stretching. Um, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually gonna go into my two-dimensional texture node, which can be found if you go to the hypershade. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to open up the hypershade here, this little blue ball. I'm going to open that up. And if we go up to textures, we can see all the images that are being used. So we used a couple images to model the tankard here. And we've also got this checker texture that's being used. So I'll click that, and you can see when I click it on the right hand side, I can double click this, and on the right hand side in the attribute editor it shows my texture. Okay, this 2D texture. So what I want to click on, it shows the file here, but what I want to click on is the place 2D texture node. So I'll click that, and when I come down here it says repeat UV. So this is a way that I can actually get my texture to repeat itself on the model so that I can view it smaller. So if I put this to like a value of 10 on the U and 10 on the V, you can see that it gives me this much smaller pattern, and what that allows me to do is see the stretching. So you can see right here we have some stretching on the texture. Okay, we've got stretching on the bottom here, which we want to fix. And we've also got some stretching on the bottom here. Okay. We got a bit of stretching here. Not too bad though. So just on the side we've got some stretching. Okay. So we want to fix those areas, and then on the top we've got stretching too. So you can see the areas that kind of need to be fixed up. So we're going to go in and do that. So how do we do that? Well, we do that using the UV editor. So if I go to face mode here, and then I open my UV editor, we'll open that up. I know that this is my cylindrical map. So it's this here. And if I double click these faces, you can see they all get selected in the UV editor as well. So right here, this sort of ring of faces here is where the stretching is going on. So what I can do is I can say, well, I'm going to grab everything below that ring. So I'll grab this ring here. So I'll shift, double click, and it'll grab everything below this ring here. In the UV editor, I can grab faces in the viewport and then edit the UVs. It'll actually grab the UVs. Okay. If I were to move it in here, it's going to move the geometry. I don't want to do that. So I'm going to hit Z. I'm going to actually move it in the UV editor. I can move faces up and down, left and right. So on the y-axis, you can see I can change the UVs. So what I want to do is actually move these up a little bit so that that texture is appearing more square like this, and it's not stretched. And you can see that I've done that just by sort of making an adjustment here. Just like that. So now I'm left with these nice squares, just like that. Okay. And I also want to grab, you can see that there's some stretching going on here. So what I'm going to do is actually grab this row by double clicking, and this row here by double clicking, shift double clicking, and I'm just going to move them a little bit up in the UV editor so that they're not being super stretched. So you got stretching there like this. I don't want them to be too stretched, so I'm just going to do that. Just move them up a little bit so that that G isn't being stretched. And that's probably what I want right there. Okay. All right. And I'm going to grab these faces here. And I'm going to see, I just want to see what's going on with these UVs here. So those are being quite stretched, so I don't want to stretch those very much. And that axis there. Okay. Now I do have an issue here, which is I've got some overlapping UVs. So I want to go to UV mode here in the viewport. Okay. And I'm actually going to what you can do actually to see if you have any overlapping UVs is you can click this little box up here and display UV distortion. Okay. You can click that, or you can say toggle shaded UV display, and this will actually show you where there's overlapping UVs, so we can see that there's some overlapping stuff there. So what I want to do is I'm actually going to grab this ring of UVs here and pull it this way so that it unfolds them. And you can see that when it went from, okay, these UVs are overlapping like that. Remember, we need to unfold it. Well, if we pull it down, if it's red like this, it means that it's folded underneath, but we need to pull it out and unfold it the other way. And you can see in the viewport that things are getting nice and square. These UVs are getting nice and square, and we can see those letters nicely. Okay, so that's good. Let's move up here and let's check out the top. Okay, so the top is obviously, we're getting a lot of stretching here. So let's figure out what's going on. First of all, we can see we have overlapping UVs there. So this line, so we can grab these UV points and pull them up. So we're going to have this kind of thing go on. There we go. So again, they were inside on each other. Excuse me, inside on themselves. We're just going to pull them up until they flip like that. And then let's just check to see that they're coming out nice and square. So I'm just going to pull these this way. There we go. That's about right. Okay. And we have some stretching happening on the top here. So how do we fix that? Well, let's go in. We'll go to face mode. And we're going to grab this ring, and then we're going to pull this way a little bit to see what's going on. Okay, so you can see that there's some stretching going on here. Just like that. And we're also going to grab this row here, and in the UV editor we're going to pull that back just to kind of see to kind of see what's up with the stretching this way. So obviously we've gone too far, gone a bit too far with it. So okay, so it looks like we've got some overlapping UVs there. So I'm gonna deselect that ring and pull it up. So there we go. We're starting to see these UVs not be so stretched, which is what we want. So we're going to pull this down until it's looking just about square like that. That's pretty good. Okay, so that's looking much better to me. Okay. So I like that. So, you know, hopefully you guys are sort of getting the gist of this. So, you know, we did our main projections and then our initial projections, and then we're finding ways to finding the problem areas in here and moving the UVs around in the UV editor to make sure that they're not so stretched anymore. So let's look for another problem area. So okay, let's do the handle now. So the handle, we do have overlapping UVs on the handle, but that's okay because what we're probably going to do is just project both sides. We can just use a quick sort of unwrap for the handle. If the handle had like a different texture on the other side of it, I would say, you know, you got to split it in half. But we'll just leave those UVs the way they are for now. So the way I'm going to sort of fix these UVs, it's not doing too bad of a job of rendering it, but I think we got a little bit of stretching in certain areas. You know, like up here, I'm not crazy about this area. So let's grab what we can do is actually grab the UV points in the viewport. So let's grab these. And let's just pull them up a bit so that we can sort of get a look at how we can make these more square, these UVs. So yeah, that's going to be the trick there. So pulling them up like this is gonna work in. It's going to help in making those UVs not so stretched. So we're going to pull these outward like that. Okay. We're just massaging the UVs so that we're getting a better result with, you know, less stretching. These aren't looking too bad actually. On the bottom they're not looking too bad, so they're just being stretched here. So I'm going to grab those two guys there and just pull them down so that we're having, so it's giving us a bit better of a result. Okay, so just like that. You can sort of hopefully you're sort of catching my drift here and what I'm doing. I'll pull these guys down a bit. Right. And then up here we've got these, a lot of stretching going on there. So we're just gonna help them along. Okay, just like that. So I'm just going around again. So you get to see all that stretching there. Just going around, pulling these around, just so that we have less texture stretching, you know, on things. So just massaging those UVs to get as least stretching as we can, the least amount of stretching that we can. Straightening all of this stuff out. Okay, so we got some pretty good results there. So let's leave that for now. Okay. So let's move on. And okay, so let's grab these. We've got all these shells here. Okay. We've got all these shells here that need to be edited. So I'm going to go to edge mode and let's do some sewing of all these shells. We're going to sew these shells back together. So if I go around and I maybe click these two edges, I'm going to say move and sew. So we can see. Let me just back that up. I'll say move and sew. Okay, so that brought that over here. And then I'll grab this, grab these edges, and say move and sew. And I'll move and sew that there. And now I can just hit the G key while grabbing some edges to sew these together. So there's one complete shell that I've got. And if I go to UV mode and I grab all the UV points, one thing I can do is I can come up to unfold selected UVs. And what that's going to do is just relax everything. So you can see how I've stitched all this together, but it's a little bit wonky in certain areas. But when I say relax, watch what happens. Watch the viewport when I go to unfold these UVs. And again, I've just got these ones selected because I don't want to unfold everything. So I'm going to hit Unfold selected UVs and watch what happens in the viewport. Beautiful. See that? Beautiful. Okay. And what it did to the shell was it brought it right into the UV, the upper right-hand quadrant. And so I've got this nice, beautiful shell. And you see when I move it, if I turn on my texture and I move it, you can see it's moving across the UV texture, and it's all nice and nicely projected on that. Okay, fairly nicely projected on that. So I'm going to move that out of the way, and let's do these ones now. I'll say move and so. Okay, so, all right, so grab that one. Grab those two edges, move and so. Okay, so now I can just hit the G key and sew these together. And you can see as I'm working, I'm just identifying the bordering edges of the UVs and sewing them together. Again, it's like sewing a piece of cloth. So I'm just hitting the G key, sewing these together. Grab that shell. Okay, so you can also just grab a shell and say unfold UVs, and it'll take that shell and unfold it. Okay, I'll put that down here. Okay, now let's watch the next one that we do. Let's watch this. So I think we're up here now. So we can see that this is kind of all jumbled up. It's not really making much sense. But if we start sewing things together, you'll see the UV seams. Watch when I start sewing these two together, you'll see these seams will start to line up. So I'm going to say move and sew. Oh. Move and sew. Come on. There we go. So those sewed each other, those sewed themselves together at the seams. I'll grab these. Move and sew. There we go. So we've got this coming together. So I'm just going to start going around and hitting the G key here. Okay. So this is giving you a look at how we can take, imagine this being a character's face. You know, this is how we sew complex objects together. How we take, like, you know, a complex organic object and sew the UVs together and then relax them. Okay, so I've grabbed this shell. I'm just going to say unfold. So it's nice and relaxed. Okay, so it evenly unfolds this for me. And then I'm going to bring that over there. And I'll go to edge mode here and sew some things to. Oop, no, I don't want to say unfold. I'm going to say move and sew. And so now it's going to, if I say I'm going to grab this edge here and this edge here, and what it should do is move these, just hit the G key, right? Okay, so these edges together. All right. Just like that. Just like sewing a sweater. Okay. And there you go. And I'll just go to shell. I'll grab that shell and say unfold. Okay. And it's going to bring it, place it nicely in here. Hit the W key to go to the move tool, and I'll move these over here. Okay, so all of these are unwrapped. Now what about this? It looks pretty good. I'd say it looks pretty good, but I think I'm getting some stretching. I can see that I've got overlapping UVs in here. You can see there's this red. You can see there's this bit of red that's here, so I've got some overlapping stuff. So what I think I'm going to do is just take it, I'll grab that shell and I'm going to say unfold. And you can already see there's a much better result. And yeah, okay, because so I've got this entire thing here, and you can see that there is no overlapping. There's no redness. And the same thing, I want to separate these two shells because they're overlapping each other. Now these two shells are the tops and bottoms. So I'm going to take these and just move. I'm going to take this and move it out of the way. And I'm going to take this and move it. Okay, so this is should be fine. I'm going to try flipping this horizontally. Yeah, so what I just had to flip that. So again, this is, see these UVs are upside down. If you see a UV shell that's completely red like this, it just needs to be flipped. So you can grab that shell, and there's this little button here. It says flip selected UVs in the V direction, which is this way. This is the V, this is the U. So it's kind of like V is Y and X is U. Truthfully, you could flip them in any direction and it'd be fine. So I'm just going to say flip in the V. And there you go. And this I can just leave as is, you know, because it's one shell, so I can just leave that as it is. That's fine. So now that we have our UVs completely nicely unwrapped and sewn back together, what we need to do now is arrange them in our upper right hand coordinates so that when we go to make a UV snapshot to get this into Photoshop to paint the texture, we'll have the right weighting of UV space. So what do I mean when I say weighting of UV space? Well, we need to take a look at our model and decide, before I do anything over here, let's take a look at our model. I'm gonna just I'll do a save here. Okay. We need to take a look at our model. I'm gonna minimize our UV editor, and we need to decide what is most important. Some people might argue that you should keep all of the UV weighting, meaning how large the shells are in the UV space, the same. So what I mean by that is you can see how the checker pattern is like really small here and really big here. Well, some people might argue that you should keep them the same size, like the sizing of the UV tiling is what we call it. But I have found that sometimes you want to have maybe a little more emphasis on a particular part of the model when you're doing texture painting. So, you know, for instance, the bottom here, if you have a visual effects shot of some kind and you know that the shot doesn't require us to see the bottom of the cup, you may say, well, I'm just going to leave this really small in the UV space. So if I open up the UV editor and I take this and I move it into the UV space here. So I should say generally, the bigger the importance of a UV shell, the larger it should be in the UV space, okay? So since I think we're going to see mostly this, okay, you know, the main cylinder part of our tankard, that to me should be the largest in the UV space. But all of them can be equally important. So if we want to put a lot of emphasis and a lot of time into painting the texture, we want to make this bigger in the UV space the biggest element in the UV space. So I might say that maybe I'll have this cylinder about this big, and then if I double click this faceplate, the faceplate's also a really important element on our tankard, because you might have some lettering in here or something. It would probably be a fairly important detail, so I'm going to leave this fairly large. Okay, so I don't want it to be small. So again, this is where my UV snapshot is. This is what we're going to do, is we're going to take a snapshot of this using UV snapshot, and that's essentially going to save out a texture image that we can bring into Photoshop and start painting over, so that we have these UVs to as reference so that we can paint on top of them. So we'll talk about that in a bit later. But essentially, the idea is we want whatever area that we know we're going to be viewing the most in the shot or in the game, we want to make sure that it's the largest in the UV space, and or has at least a little more importance in the UV space, because that's going to be the most detailed. So I'll maybe make this, because this is going to be fairly well viewed, so this is going to be quite large, I think. So we've already, okay, so you can see we've already run out of UV space, so we need to take these two things, and I'll go to the scale tool, and we'll make these two smaller. It's like that. And I'll move this up here, because we're going to see it. And this, if the cup is going to be stationary in our game, fine. If it's not going to move, then we'll just make this tiny, because we're literally not going to see it, and we can kind of just cheat that. If we decide in the game that the cup is movable and we can actually pick it up and look at the bottom, then we might make this a bit bigger, because the texture needs to look good on the bottom as well. Not as good as the other things, but okay. The handles, that's important, so we want that to be fairly big. So I'm going to take this and give it some good UV space. So I'm already kind of seeing, okay, well, the handle is going to be about this big. Now let's make sure, you always want to make sure that none of your UVs are hanging over the upper right hand coordinate quadrant. It has to be within the UV space. So we can see, I want to be careful to make sure that no UVs are hanging over there. Okay, so that's good. And I can grab this and maybe I'll move it in here, just like that. So you can see how I'm arranging my UVs, right? Again, being careful to make sure that nothing is over this side. It has to be within this big square. Basically, when I turn my image on, it has to be within where the image is. Just remember that. Okay. And then I've got my bolts here, these rivets. They are going to be quite small because they're really not an important detail. So I'll just go to the R tool, I'll just rotate these and put them in place, and I'm just going to scale them down. Okay. And I'll turn my image off because I really don't need to see it. Okay. And I think what I'm going to do actually is I'm gonna rotate these a bit so that they're straight, or straightish. Straighten them out. Okay. Just rotate each one, straighten them out. Okay. So just like that. And if I just look around at how my UV spaces are being used, I think that's pretty good. I think maybe the faceplate should be a little bit bigger. And I'm going to make the handle a bit smaller. This, I'll make it smaller. I feel like I want to have more room for the faceplate. But these bolts, I'm going to make them a lot smaller actually. So something like that. Faceplate a bit bigger. I wanted this to be a bit bigger. This to be a bit bigger. Okay, and let me take this, put it down here. I'm just thinking about how to arrange my UVs here. So handle. I just want to see how I can handle the handle. And this. I think I can afford to make the, the liquid, whatever I put for the liquid, just a bit smaller than the handle. But I want to be careful. I want to be careful that I don't have anything that's overlapping here. Okay. And I want to have a bit of a buffer, between islands. A pixel buffer. Okay. So, just like that. This needs to move down a bit and over a bit. No. Okay. Okay, I'm getting quiet here. I know. Sorry. I'm just thinking. Okay, so this has quite a lot of space. Come to think of it, I'm going to put these up here. Just like this. And this up here. And if I turn this way, bring it here, I can actually make it a bit bigger. Okay. All right. So I think I'm fairly happy with that. Just arranging things, but I mean, you may take a while to say, okay, well, what's the most important? And maybe I'm feeling maybe like I want to make the faceplate and this guy a little bit smaller, and then make this a bit bigger. Again, I have to really be careful about real estate here. And then maybe these, I'll actually make them smaller. Like that. Just thinking about how to arrange my UVs, right? From biggest to smallest in terms of importance. So maybe that works best for me. Okay, so I think I'm just gonna leave it at that. Just something like that. Okay, so I'm gonna save that. So there you go. UVs. Actually just noticed that these were kind of stretched this way. So now I have to make another adjustment. I have to make another adjustment. And like I say, this, UVs can take a bit to figure out your arrangement of importance. And I think I'm gonna have to be forced to make this a bit smaller so that everything sort of fits. Okay. Alright, so I'm just gonna do a final check to make sure that everything is within my UV space here. I'll save that. And there you go. Those are going to be my UVs for my tankard. So now I'm ready to do a UV snapshot within here and take it into Photoshop and paint it. But I'm going to stop the lesson here because I just wanted to show you how to work with UVs, get them projected, get them sewn back together wherever need be, and get them arranged properly with regard to importance, from greatest to least importance in the UV space. Okay, so nice job everybody, and I'll see you in the next video. Ta-ta.